John Ninomiya is a licensed hot air and gas balloonist with over 20 years of experience. Larry Moss builds world record latex balloon sculptures. The collaboration between Larry and John combined balloon art with the extreme sport of cluster ballooning. They came together to create and launch the world's first piloted latex balloon sculpture. This project began with the goal of creating and flying the world's first piloted latex balloon sculpture. It would require more than 18,000 balloons, and the collaboration of Larry Moss, a balloon artist from Henrietta, New York, and John Ninomiya, a pilot from Solana Beach, California. Larry Moss is a renowned performer, author, and balloon artist, and has taught classes in balloon art round the world. Larry worked with fellow artist Royal Sorrell to design and create a world record balloon sculpture using more than 40,000 latex balloons.
I just love doing things that have never been done before. I'm always looking for a project that's different, unique, that will make me stand out.
John Ninomiya is an experienced flyer who has piloted many different crafts.
All those balloons, whereas hot air balloons are very convenient, so I still do 90% of my ballooning in hot air balloons. However, I really like flying solo. I like flying in a harness. I have a hot air balloon called a cloud hopper, which is one that you fly in a harness with the propane tank back behind you. And I've enjoyed doing that for many years, as well as other sports like flying paragliders and hang gliders. So I'm used to kind of being out there and not in a basket.
For a promotional flight for a winery, John created a rudimentary sculpture with his cluster balloons.
I did a special shape cluster balloon. I was sponsored by the Temecula Valley Balloon and Wine Festival to do this balloon shaped as like a bunch of grapes. So I had all of these purple balloons, and they were in a kind of triangular shape, and then I had a bunch of green balloons coming off the top for the stem. So that was my very crude attempt at balloon sculpture using the balloon cluster. And Larry did a little write-up of that, and we got to corresponding by email, and got a chance to visit with him when he was out in San Diego, and we decided that we wanted to do a project together.
With different but overlapping interests, Larry and John would first cross paths in 2001. John and Larry talked about working together to create a flying sculpture. The concepts discussed included a dragon and a chariot.
We tried coming up with something that made sense in the air, and we wanted to do a dragon. And it became this huge engineering project. It stepped away from the art and the piloting to just all sorts of things that we weren't sure were going to work. A flying octopus is certainly unique and unusual, and we know it's going to get attention. But I was thinking more structurally, it would be a much more balanced sculpture. It would be, somewhat easier to predict what it will do.
A telephone call put the project in motion.
Andrew Ramsey, the coordinator of Family Fest, called me. He found my name somewhere and asked me if I would be willing to do a stage show for them. And he started talking about this event and how this was the second year they've done it, and it was going to be bigger, and every year he's going to be bigger, and he wants to draw attention to Sodus Point. And the more he talked about it, I realized that this was an opportunity to push a different sort of project. They sounded like they wanted something bigger, and I proposed it, and he just fell in love with the idea immediately.
The village of Sodus Point is on the shore of Lake Ontario in central New York State. Sodus Point contains marinas, cottages, and a public beach adjacent to a pier and lighthouse. Though there are many year-round residents, activity in the village peaks during the warm summer months. The Family Fest is a series of events spanning the months of July and August. The highlights of the Family Fest are the entertainers and outdoor movies. Finding a site in the village of Sodus Point suitable for the construction of the sculpture took a little bit of searching.
We were looking for an indoor location that could house the entire finished structure. This meant a pretty wide open space. Once we found a space large enough, the next issue was having doors large enough to bring it outside.
The time allotted for the construction was 5 days, and it was not negotiable. The assembly must be completed before the Saturday evening launch. The team members came to Sodus Point from all over the United States and Canada. Each morning, Larry would call a status meeting to discuss problems encountered, identify tasks to be addressed, and check on the progress.
We now know all the right people, so we can ask for other equipment that we need, which is an important point. If there's any equipment that you can think of that we don't have, don't try to fake it, ask. Turns out this town has everything.
There were no lights in the marina barn. Portable lights were purchased and had to be assembled before nightfall. Because of the large size of the sculpture, the balloon most often used was the 646 airship. Many hours were spent filling balloons, which wound up covering a significant portion of the floor space. When enough balloons were inflated, it was time to assemble tentacles. Tasks were divided among the team. While some people twisted the balloons together, others dedicated their time to balloon inflation. The 646 balloons were connected end to end to create polygons. 5-inch round balloons were affixed to the joints. Then the round balloons were used to connect the polygons, forming a tube. As the tube lengthened, a tentacle began to take shape. Building a large-scale balloon sculpture is a new endeavor for Don Caldwell.
Honestly, having never done anything like this before, I'm kind of just trusting Larry and Royal and the guys who put this together, the pilot who's taking it up. You know, I'm trusting them. I know some of the techniques, I know the weaving techniques involved with constructing it, but again, I've never done anything this big. So as far as the structural integrity and everything, I'm just kind of going on their word, but you know, I've seen what they've done before and it's some mighty impressive stuff, so I think everything's going to go well.
Please help me. Please. We've been here for 16 weeks now. I'm being held hostage in a giant flying balloon octopus factory. Send help. Send them to... Okay, I can't talk now. Okay, coming. Shh.
Eight tentacles had to be built, and each tentacle would be 45 feet in length. The volume of work dictated that all crew members direct their efforts at tentacle construction.
Every once in a while we get a break, because it is balloons. There's a hole here. I'm going to repair it. I'm going to take another balloon and just tie it in. Because once I tie it in, you won't even see it. And that's it.
Rich Hewson handled the mechanical and engineering problems. He created a 20-foot pole using PVC pipe to hoist string over the rafters. The string would be used as part of a makeshift pulley system to raise the tentacles. A completed tentacle is straight. Modifications are needed to add curves.
After we make a long, straight section, we're taking the bubbles and/or whatever untied balloon that we have, and after pushing a section in, as like this, we wrap the connector sections one to the other, or rather connector bubbles one to the other, like this, which creates a bit of a dimple on the tentacle and consequently forces it into a slight arc.
Becoming an entertainer happened to Todd Neufeld while he was making plans to do something else.
So I continued to do it a little bit in college, and then I graduated after 5 years. They were just like, dude, you got to go. You have all these credits, a bunch of degrees, go get a real job. But I wasn't going to get a real job because that's no fun. So I decided that I could hide for 3 years in law school. My day job was an internship, so it didn't pay anything. So rather than work at Starbucks or bus tables or telemarket at night, I would go to Harvard Square and work balloons for tips. Next thing you know, 3 years later, there's no reason to work as a lawyer because I have a whole business.
To build the head of the octopus, the 646 balloons would be stacked on top of each other. The 25-foot high head would require 50 rows. Inflating these balloons became a focus. An airflow metering machine was used to inflate each balloon to exactly the same size. Using identically sized building blocks is imperative in creating balloon sculptures. Although the tentacles were 45 feet long, they only weighed about 10 pounds each. Large balloon sections could be easily moved by a single person.
Oh, a weakness.
The wide end of the tentacle was created with hexagons. The narrow section was created using triangles. To create a smooth taper for the end of the tentacle, progressively smaller triangle segments were built and attached. Joined latex balloons are surprisingly strong and resilient. Tentacle pieces could even be juggled without damage. As an extra precaution, string was used to secure one ridge of the tentacle. In the unlikely case that many balloons burst during the flight, the tentacle would not separate into multiple pieces. The sharp stones and dirt of the gravel floor posed a problem. To protect the balloons, a layer of plastic and carpeting remnants were put down on top of the floor. To further protect the sculpture, completed tentacles were suspended from the rafters. Water-filled balloons were used to counterbalance the weight of the tentacle. After an inspection, a design problem was uncovered. The octopus head was to be constructed with a vertical wall of balloons. However, the original design using a stacked single chain of 646 balloons was not going to be strong enough. A better idea was needed.
Okay, we are presently building the outer skin of the octopus head. The skin is composed of 28 pairs of these 646 balloons tied together. What we have done is taken two lines and attached a skinny balloon to the intersection of the thicker balloons. The skinny balloon is officially called a 260. The thicker balloons are called 646. The first line of balloons slides up through the opening of the second line of balloons and then is twisted on to the third line of balloons. And so this process will continue, forming a very strong, self-supporting lattice work through the octopus's head.
With the improved wall design, a group of twisters descended on the octopus head. Double-linked chains of 646 balloons were woven together using the skinny 260s to create a strong lattice structure. Those not working on the wall kept the assemblers supplied by creating strings of double-linked 646s and bundles of 260s. The departmentalized supply and assembly process was very efficient. In about 45 minutes, the circular wall had risen to a height of more than 7 feet. By day 2, the construction was well underway. At the morning meeting, Larry discussed his thoughts on the project timeline.
I would love it if tonight we could have the tentacles entirely finished and not have to look at them again. I was hoping the head would be further along than this. How many of you are willing to keep working until dark like we have been?
How many were expecting not to?
Oh, okay. A couple of the local folks invited us all over to their place about 8 miles down the road tomorrow for dinner. So,
Are they serious?
They are serious. They are barbecuing if you guys are interested.
Yeah.
And I said I would let them know tomorrow. So basically we can either, if we think we're going to be ahead, we can quit early tomorrow night and do that. Do we have any vegetarians here? Steve is, okay. They said they can handle that if we let them know.
We can eat Steve.
We can do that too.
He doesn't have.
He's a vegetarian, so he should be good for us.
It's not going to taste good.
While Todd Neufeld sort of bumped into the entertaining world, Don Caldwell knew for a long time what he wanted to be.
I was convinced that I wanted to be a magician, and to be honest with you, I never really liked balloons most of my life. At least, twisting them, I was never that impressed with it. I always saw guys just making dogs and swords and figured, because I had no idea this world existed. And if you'd told me even 10 years ago, when I first started getting into balloons, that someday I'd pretty much give up magic and make my entire living and have such a great time doing balloons, I would have never believed you. And now I can't imagine doing anything else. There's a lot of important things you can do in life. You can teach children, you can heal the sick, but I think laughter and having fun are pretty high priorities too. So,
More height needed to be added to the octopus head. A multitude of 646 balloons were inflated and tied into double chains. Each chain would be made 28 links long. At more than 7 feet tall, the head was too high to add layers on top. Like the tentacles, the head would be suspended from the rafters. Once off the floor, chains of balloons would be added on the bottom of the head. The crew was motivated to get a lot accomplished so there would be spare time to attend the barbecue dinner planned for Thursday evening. The construction continued as the sun set. After a brief break for dinner, a number of the team returned for night work on the sculpture. The huge head and tentacles, looming in the darkness, transformed the open spaces of the barn into a surreal atmosphere. At the start of day 3, Larry walked around to assess the construction progress.
We're a little behind where I'd like to be, but actually pretty close to where I expected to be at this point, so it's not too bad. I'm a little concerned because I'm getting a little tired of looking at orange and yellow balloons, and I'd like to move on to something a little more colorful and bolder that we can add to this. Cool fish to attach to the tentacles of the octopus. Someone was talking about a mermaid, a life-size or larger-than-life mermaid to go with the larger-than-life octopus. It would be wonderful if we could add that sort of thing in. Getting this thing out is going to be one of those interesting challenges that we've figured out on paper, but who knows what's going to happen when we try it. The barn doors are about 25 feet wide, 25 feet high. The sculpture is obviously significantly larger than that. So we're bringing it outside in pieces. It's going to be walked, carried by foot down to the launch site, and then assembled fully when we get out to the launch site, assembled on the field. We're going to take the entire crew and probably a number of people from the community also that have volunteered to help us out.
When this octopus is put together, there's a reason the drawings, the shirts, everything only shows the octopus. I've been talking about doing fish and mermaids and whatever else. I'd love to do that. That'll make it more fun for all of us. We can really shine because each person here can do the things that nobody else does. And the way we're going right now, the way Royal and I were talking earlier about things, we actually have enough of the octopus at this point. We need to put a face on it, we need to put a hat on it, but we can pretty much say the octopus is done. So by tonight I am expecting to start seeing mermaids and related things. I see no reason we can't.
Wearing camouflage, he could disappear.
Yes, I have decided today I'm hiding it.
Oh look, where's Don? We don't know.
I just see something shining off of the tentacle.
Actually, for those who are wondering how it's going to go together, it's going to look a lot like this. Big dome with nothing on top, and then a lot of orange underneath it. So this is high on the scale model.
Lovely.
Work from this. Okay.
8 arms.
I'm working on it.
Would you mind some guy sitting on your head?
Turn the camera off. Turn the camera off now.
Don't forget birds perching.
With the head and tentacles near completion, some of the twisters began to work on the detail pieces.
This is going to be a ship's wheel, and what we've got here, that's the octopus head, and then we've got a crew here building a captain's hat for the octopus. The ship's wheel is going to go on the crest that's going to be on the front of the captain's hat, just to give us more detail, a little more character.
While Don was completing work on the ship's wheel, the group creating the hat needed balloons.
now we've got the ship's wheel for the hat of the octopus, and now I'm going to weave a crest to go behind it, so as a background, so it looks like a little patch sewn onto his hat, which is, kind of silly because, it's an octopus, and I don't think he'd be wearing it in the first place, but I don't question. They just say, make it, okay, I make it. It's an artistic thing, who knows?
Don started at a blistering pace working on a background for the ship's wheel. Elsewhere, work began on the octopus hat.
So what we're actually constructing is the top of the hat, and we're using a geometric design that's made up of triangles because anytime you have 3 points, you have more stability to a pattern. We started out with what's called a basic weave in our twisting environment, where we start off with 6 spokes and build out from those. From there, we made our own pattern using multiple triangles and a double loop to build the stability. This will be the top of the hat, so it'll lay fairly flat. Obviously, there's some challenges with using balloons this size, but we are going to make it flat and then work our way in, so that we'll actually pretend that the top of the hat is the bottom and work our way up and then build the brim from there.
Don was zooming right along on the balloon twisting superhighway until he hit a bump in the road. The creative process can be fickle. Don stopped to reconsider his approach, and after consulting other twisters, he decided to scrap his initial idea. After a brief but touching memorial service, Don once again started from scratch.
They're attaching the derriere of the octopus to the body of him.
The bottom of the octopus was a flat, circular disc. This end cap was secured to the head of the octopus using 260 balloons. Pleased with his new direction, the construction of the crest for the hat was proceeding well.
Right now, I'm doing a huge weave, and what I'm going to end up doing in the end is I'm going to pop this strip of white balloons down the back of it so that it lays flat. These are just here kind of to give me direction so I don't lose my place going around. So pop those, they'll actually lay flat, and then we're going to take additional black balloons and interlace them through the holes in this so we get a solid black background, like a woven tapestry. And then the ship's wheel that I made earlier is going to mount on the front of that. And that becomes the patch for the front of the captain's hat that goes on top of the octopus. And before that happens, I'm probably gonna take the whole thing and pull it up over me and take a little nap because, man, I'm just beat. We've been here like 3 months now and I'm worn out.
Right now, we're building a telescope. Technique we're using is wrapping sections of 646 rings with 260 pairs, which functionally hides the knot, although you can see the excess, which will eventually be trimmed off. This is going to be 3 sections long. This will be a true consecutive telescope with 3 progressively smaller sections culminating in an eyepiece, which will be attached to the octopus. And if all goes well, we might even have a bulging eye sticking out the end of the telescope.
Right, today on Balloon Hunter, we're tracking the elusive Debbie. Look, there's one now! Crikey, look at the choppers on this one. Show them the teeth, Deb, show the teeth. Look at that, ain't she a beaut? This one, I'm gonna guess, is in its early 20s.
Very nice.
Yeah, I thought that might work.
Your name is?
All right, turn the camera off. Okay, come with me.
Debbie Piotrowski was responsible for tracking supplies, ordering materials and food for the team, as well as helping out with the balloon twisting.
I've always been in the art field. I went to college and studied art, and I've always had a job that's pertained to art in some way ever since college. I was a floral designer for 14 years before I retired from that. That was a natural segue into balloon decorating.
The final large component for the sculpture was the hat. The flat crown became the build platform for the rest of the hat. The sides were constructed employing the brick wall weave using 260 and 646 balloons.
This is going to be the visor on the hat that the octopus is wearing. And the technique we're using here is very similar. It's actually the same thing we did for the whole body of the octopus. Now, even though the visor itself is a flat piece coming off of a hat, we're making it double thick, 2 layers of these balloons thick. For stiffness, if we just used 1 layer of balloons coming straight out, it would be very floppy. The 2 layers cause the balloons to rub against each other and hold their shape better.
The hat was completed when the crest and the bill were attached, but the 20-foot height of the octopus head created a problem.
We've got to put a hat on the octopus or somehow cover up the top of that head. I've been told that we're going to have a cherry picker to help us get up there. I haven't seen that yet. So attaching things to the top at this point of something that big could get quite challenging.
The solution for attaching the hat would be surprisingly simple. Instead of putting the hat on the top of the head, it would be attached upside down on the bottom. Once the hat was attached, the head of the sculpture would be flipped. The dedicated work on the construction had put the project on schedule, allowing the crew to take time off to attend the neighbors' cookout on Thursday night. Of course, the artists brought their supply of balloons to the dinner, and before long, balloon creations began appearing.
Isn't it marvelous? It's really me.
Can of a black and white cap.
The most detailed piece of the night was created by Royal Sorrell, a balloon caricature of Mike. Royal's sculpture reflected Mike's curly gray hair as well as the blue of his t-shirt. The level of detail Royal put into this piece in an amazingly short amount of time was very impressive. By the start of day 4, the structure of the head was complete. The next task was to rig the head so that it could be flipped vertically. Lines were configured to provide leverage and rotation points. While working on the line rigging, the integrity of the structure was inspected, and repairs were implemented as required.
This bear will boldly go where no bear has gone before.
Once rigged, the upside-down head was ready to be flipped. The rotation had to be carefully controlled to ensure that balloons did not burst during the flipping process. With the head now in the proper orientation, the face of the octopus could be created. 5-inch round balloons were fastened together to form a garland. Garlands could be flexed into curves or circles to form the eyes and mouth of the octopus.
Okay, so right now, I'm making a fish. So right now I'm gonna spiral a couple of balloons together, kind of like this pattern you see on top here. And then I'm going to wrap them around this big round balloon, and that's gonna become the fin that goes on the side of the jumbo-sized fishy I'm making. A lot of today is gonna be spent doing details to go with the octopus. So this is a fish that'll be floating either above him or beneath him, or might even be wrapped in one of the tentacles. We've got people working on mermaids, people working on telescopes, all kinds of nautical fun things and sea life to kind of add a little more color and a little more excitement to the whole thing. I'm very excited about this.
What I'm doing right here is this is a 3-balloon braid that we're using to make the gold trim on our telescope. Now, it's important that we have the gold trim so everyone knows that our captain, the octopus, has a very fine telescope, one with brass trim, and not one of those cheap telescopes that's all black and plastic. We also figured if it did not have the brass trim, it might look like a party horn.
The pilot, John Ninomiya, came to inspect the octopus and discuss rigging the octopus for flight. John's inspection was for issues relating to flight characteristics, safety, and the method for fastening the octopus to John's harness. Meanwhile, outside the head, the balloon creature genesis continued.
The turtle is just something I actually usually do with helium, and we usually just let it float away. We usually don't put the 350s in there to fill it up, but we're doing this to make it look a little bit better. so it's good enough to go with the display.
Larry turned the balloon artists free to create whatever detail pieces they dreamed up. The only restriction was that the pieces should be consistent with the overall maritime theme.
Bring the mouth corner down slightly so it's not touching the eye. But that's, yeah, like that. That works for me.
Some folks.
To effect repairs on the roof inside the head, makeshift scaffolding was created using folding tables.
Hello, kids at home. We're back with Don and his mermaid. This is her. We now have the body. So from here, I'm going to do some detail work. I'm going to put in the hair, like I said, draw the eyes and the face on, do the hands, because that just looks wrong. She's all stumpy. And then after that, I'm going to spend about 6 hours weaving the tail portion, which is going to take probably the rest of the night, and hopefully I'll have it done in time for the launch tomorrow. So 12 hours.
I am working on a starfish. We got the body, or the base of the body started here, and we're gonna have our 5 legs. I'm gonna build these out, and it's gonna go on here with this weave pattern that Royale showed me. And when we're done, we're gonna have this nice big red starfish.
Oh, hey, you're back. Okay, so it's been about 15 minutes since the last time we talked. Currently, I'm making the tail for the mermaid. This is the top half of the mermaid that we've got so far here. And what we're doing right now is weaving these balloons together, and at the end, she's going to fit inside like that.
As the features of the face neared completion, Royal had finished construction of a huge anchor.
Hello, and welcome back to Mermaid Central. I'm your host, Don Caldwell. My compatriot, Todd Neufeld, over here playing with our mermaid. Come on, okay. Hey, Todd.
And you shall be healed.
Thank you, Todd. It's doing the mermaid. No, it's my mermaid. It's my mermaid. Okay. So we got the head. We have a face on the head. And now we have the mermaid tail, which we merely plug in like so.
Look at that. It fits like a
mermaid tail.
Yes.
Yeah. So now we're going to do a little finishing detail work, but this is pretty much the mermaid.
She's hot.
Wow.
You need to move her seashells. They're
cutie purple breasts. You know why she has seashells, right?
She's by the seashore.
No, because these shells are too big.
Just like comedy.
Except for the funny part. Yeah. We just leave that out and save the trouble.
Why are her lips shaped like that?
It'll be visible from 1,000 feet, that's why. Yeah.
Got it.
Up close, she looks hideous. From 1,000 feet, she's beautiful.
You are the same way?
A beast of my own creation.
Yes, in the image of her maker.
It started simply as a bantering of ideas. The ideas became a theme and then morphed into a covert operation. Unbeknownst to Larry, Don and Todd were about to hatch a secret plan. Operation Fisherman.
Yeah.
So we'll make some hands.
Make hands. I'm going to start filling this with some gold balloons.
You would have to have kind of leaning against the tentacle.
Right. And I'm going to... Ooh, that'd be good, like a whole sushi sort of thing going on. Yeah, with the octopus.
Or, you know what would be great if she was fishing?
Oh, no, let's make a fisherman. Let's make a little fisherman with the, the rain slicker and the hat and everything and a fishing pole. Just like dangling. He'd be like, hanging off the side of the octopus. That's good stuff.
That actually is really
Okay, we have to do it quick though before Larry figures out what we're doing to him.
And we need to give him a face like Larry. So with Larry hanging off the octopus.
Shh, don't tell Larry. This is a secret. Okay, so we make a fisherman that looks like Larry, dangling precariously with the fishing pole and the line going up to the octopus.
Okay.
Done deal. All right. Rock on. Life is good.
Great.
The detail pieces that were completed were stored near the back of the barn. Royal started construction on a ship's captain figure. Meanwhile, Todd had started working on Operation Fisherman.
All right, so what I'm making are some eyeballs. Who's not looking? I'm making a face. It's gonna look like Larry. We even have the gray hairs hidden in the ponytail and the stray things, but he needs some eyeballs. and this is a long eyeball. And the cool thing is, the shrink wrap part, this can be tied into a balloon figure. For example, this head that we're doing, I can now place the eyeball somewhere and use this extra piece to tie it on. Larry the Cyclops. And for the record, while we're on it, I just realized that this eyeball is much too small for his head. So I'm now going to do the same thing in a larger size.
We have the head of the ship's captain. We still have to make a hat and finish off the back because he's a bit of a flathead right now. But we got the facial construct and got our construction finished, and that's more important to me. So as you can see, he's got the traditional captain's beard and nice ruddy cheeks, big soulful eyes. And he'll be affixed to the top of this body here eventually. So he looks like a captain.
Okay, so what Mr. Neufeld and myself are working on right now is a secret covert project. Shh. What we're doing is we're building a fisherman. This is actually his rain slicker here. That's his belt. I'm going to finish the bottom here so we have a nice even row of balloons instead of this straggled mess I've got here. And then we'll do the arms and everything. It'll look kind of like the Gordon fisherman. And what we're going to do is he's going to be holding a fishing pole like this, which will be dangling from the octopus. So he hooked the octopus and then got carried away with it. What we're not telling anybody is that this is the head going onto it, which bears a striking resemblance to our fearless leader, Mr. Larry Moss. And so we're looking to spring this on Larry in about half an hour here. Stay tuned for the fun, kids.
The entire sculpture was created by twisting balloons together, except for the tentacle suckers. Glue dots were used to attach these circular donut balloons. The donut balloons were the last detail needed to complete the tentacles. Elsewhere, Royal Sorel had completed the ship's captain.
Now previously, you had seen me constructing the captain's face. As you can see, the captain's head is complete. He has hair, he has a hat, he has the captain's beard, and a silly grin because he knows he's going up. This is a skinny captain. I might make him a little bit fatter later with one more section to flesh him out. He does have the captain's bars, he has the captain's braids.
You just grab it there, it's up by the wheel like he's hanging over here like okay. Captain Larry has been on the phone this entire time. He hasn't actually twisted a balloon. So, in honor of Larry, we have Larry holding a cell phone.
So we're working on this fisherman here.
Yeah, it's a Captain Larry. I don't know if we can send him up with a cell phone. I mean, he's always been on a cell phone the whole week.
After 4 days of work, the majority of the sculpture was completed and spirits were high. But Saturday would bring new challenges. How well would the pieces survive transportation to the launch site? Once there, how long would the final assembly take? Would the weather cooperate for John's flight? Excitement and trepidation followed the team home Friday night. Day 5, the flight day, finally arrived. As he did every morning, Larry walked the floor inspecting the sculpture.
Just a couple hours left before we start getting things ready on the ball field. And the biggest thing right now is visual inspections, see where there are structural issues. The tentacles are quite soft now and floppy. They weren't before, so we might need to patch a couple spots. We're going to end up on the field rigging up the tentacles. The lines that are currently being used to support this from the rafters are going to be used to go to the tip of the top of the octopus, so the tentacles will be attached kind of like legs on a marionette. The detail pieces are going to get very interesting because they're all going to have to be attached individually. When we see what everything looks like, that's when we're going to take the last few minutes and decide at that point where they're going to go. I think that's what we're going to do. We'll probably end up attaching some of these extra pieces to the lines that are going to go up to the head of the octopus.
Well, basically we've got all these balloons tied together and we need to get as many of them separated as possible for when we get down to the field. We're going to be repairing anything that was fell apart during transportation. They're in pretty good shape right now, but going down there, it's probable that we'll have some poppage of balloons. We tied a lot of them together, and if we separate them and get single balloons, we'll be able to tie these in where we need repairs done.
When he's not repairing balloons, Ian Stewart has an interesting occupation back home in Canada. He's a hypnotist.
I do the things like stop smoking, weight management, phobias, stuff of that order, but I primarily do the entertainment side where I have people on stage and do Miss America pageants and weightlifting competitions and entertaining things of that nature.
One twister took homework back to his hotel room. Sarah holds a seahorse that Mark Verge built in his room Friday night.
And I have the finished product of what I've been working on the past 2 days, the starfish. And Sarah and Marianne helped me out. They helped me build the legs. It took a little while, but this is our finished product.
The last of the detail pieces were being finished before the move. Royal describes his latest creation.
It is designed to be very similar to a sand shark. It has a blunt nose and wide maw. This one was fed. We have to make sure that our sharks are fed so they don't eat people. So we keep a little bit of extra fish in there just in case, because they have a deep belly.
The detail pieces were complete, allowing the balloon artists to turn their attention to creating hats.
Get that on. I'll hold it.
We have here are two of our lovelier assistants with this project, along with a couple of hats that I made for them so they can be all festive and stuff. This would be the Octopus hat to go with our mascot here. So I didn't have time for the captain's hat. Just stick it that way. And this is the little fishy under the sea hat. We got some seaweed, some coral, some bubbles. So, you know, I'm trying to go with the whole color thing. I want to make sure it matches the outfits.
Aww.
I'm very color conscious.
Very nice.
The head was lowered from the rafters and then modified slightly for transport to the launch site.
What we want to do is squish the face and the back of the head together, okay? Now, not all the way till they touch, obviously. We just want to get down to maybe a 6-foot thickness there. And that'll get the face and the head close enough that when it's laid down, it'll go underneath the wires. We don't quite know what the hat's going to do yet.
Once the octopus was ready for transport, Larry coordinated the volunteers and the octopus team for the parade to the baseball field.
You're going to release the tentacles that you want to go one at a time. We're going to get 8 people to walk it out there. One person is going to stay with the tentacle. All the others are going to come back as we get people from the crowd. Debbie and Julie are going to take people from the crowd and assign them to a tentacle as we're walking, as they walk out.
The tentacles are going ahead of the head?
The tentacles are going to go ahead, and the reason is that once we clear everybody out, once we've moved the tentacles out and they're being held safely, everybody else can come back. Everybody that isn't needed on that one can come back and help with the head.
The volunteers from town were divided into groups and then each group given a tentacle. As the tentacles left one by one, the octopus parade began.
Octopus parade!
A bucket truck chaperoned the octopus head. When a wire was too low for the octopus to fit beneath, PVC poles were used to support the wire, providing the octopus safe passage. lines inside the octopus head were removed, allowing the head to return to its previous round shape. A line was strung above the sculpture to help with stabilization in the open and exposed space of the field. A visual inspection was performed on the balloons of the head and tentacles. Weak or damaged balloons were identified and replaced. To make the mass of the sculpture closer to neutral buoyancy, 6-foot balloons were filled with helium to be placed in the cavity of the hat above the head. The large balloons were sealed shut using plastic zip ties. After inserting 6-foot balloons in the hat, an even larger 15-foot balloon nearly filled the main cavity in the head. Outside the head, the 45-foot-long tentacles were being secured. Rich determined the points where the suspension lines for the tentacles would be attached. Left unattended, Todd and Don embarked on another covert operation.
Is this going to be the first ever flying balloon octopus? Yes, yes. But what nobody knows is that secretly, it's also going to be the first giant, right, not so giant, flying balloon dog.
That twice again, ladies
is
and
a
gentlemen.
world record.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. Just thinking about the kid who catches it when it falls out at 1,000 feet.
Hey,
Ask me one lucky kid.
that is. Oh, to be that kid.
Right now, we're blowing up helium balloons inside the legs to give them a little bit of puff and a little bit of lift.
For additional lift, 3-foot helium-filled balloons were inflated inside the large end of the tentacles. Before launch, 3-foot balloons would also be attached at the tip of each tentacle. The weight of the latex balloons in the sculpture was about 170 pounds. John Ninomiya, the pilot, weighed about 180 pounds. John would be taking up about 185 pounds in water ballast. The lift necessary to raise the sculpture, pilot, and ballast would require approximately 10,000 cubic feet of helium. The helium would be contained in nearly 80 5-foot and 7-foot latex balloons. About an hour would be spent to inflate and secure these balloons. The balloons were filled 4 at a time and then tethered to sandbags. The small groups of balloons were staged around the field. The separate groups of balloons were collected and then secured to the pilot's harness. Once attached to the harness, the balloons were carefully allowed to float into the cluster configuration needed for the flight. After the tentacles were secured to the head, the team was free to add detail pieces to the sculpture.
So now, we're preparing to attach Captain Larry, our fearless leader, to the bottom of the octopus, so he'll be hoisted up with everything else.
As the sun arched toward the horizon, the temperatures remained in the low 80s. The wind speed was less than 5 knots. There were a few non-threatening thin clouds in an otherwise clear sky. In short, the weather conditions for the flight were ideal. The ground crew used control lines fastened to the pilot's harness to assist while John maneuvered himself above the sculpture. Once in the proper position above the head, the sculpture would be attached. John's dream of flying using balloons started back in childhood.
The idea of flying with helium balloon clusters, I guess, goes back to an idea a lot of kids have had of going up with a bunch of toy balloons. I, over the years, did regular hot air ballooning and then started doing the single-person hot air ballooning. I learned to fly regular gas balloons with the netting and the sandbags and all that. That's very involved sort of sport, and not a whole lot of people do it. And so eventually I sort of gravitated back to doing this thing that I thought about doing as a kid.
The crowd waited anxiously. There was no countdown, and almost without warning, John Ninomiya set off on the adventure of flying an octopus. John controlled the flight by bursting balloons or releasing ballast.
When you want to stop going up, you let a little of your gas go. In my case, that involves either cutting away or bursting the individual balloons. And then when it's time for you to level off again from coming down, you can drop some of your water, your ballast, and kind of level off, and if you need to, go back up, that sort of thing. So that's the type of control you have.
The plan for the flight was to detach the sculpture while over the water. Retrieving the sculpture from a water touchdown would be much easier than a similar operation on land. The sculpture was cut loose over Sodus Bay and allowed to drift down toward the water. Though it came close, the free-floating flying octopus would not land in the water. Instead, it landed on the roof of a boathouse. Freed from the additional weight of the sculpture, John and his cluster balloons gained altitude. To reduce his altitude, John pulled down and popped balloons from the overhead cluster. The pilot recovery crew had followed John on his trip across Sodus Bay. After reducing altitude, he lowered a line to the recovery craft and was safely guided onto the boat. An amphibious vehicle from the Sodus Point Fire Department was the craft best suited to recover the octopus and haul it up onto the nearby public beach. Destruction and cleanup of the balloons was planned to be an audience participation event.
What we're going to do is stick some coupons inside some of the balloons for free stuff and invite everybody from town to come and pop the balloons and pop them and bag them, and that way we can clean it up in 20 minutes.
The voracious crowd made short work of the task. The 600 man-hours of construction were no match to the 3 minutes it took the crowd to dispatch the defenseless octopus.
Now I'm on blowing duty, which our usual blowers are off today, so they said, Don, please help us. You gotta step in because we don't know what we're doing. I said, okay, fine. You know, not like it's really worth my while, but you know, I figure for friends, I can make the sacrifice, and you know, I'll throw them this one because I'm a giver like that. I really think that I'm a giver, and so I'm willing to pitch in and do the important stuff.
The full-length Flying an Octopus video can be purchased for $29.95 plus shipping on the World Wide Web at tbayer.com.
Would you mind some guy sitting on your head?
Turn the camera off.